So let's start the webinar. Just a few notes before we move on to the webinar itself. So before we start, please make sure that your microphone and video turned off during the presentations. First, we would also like you to rename yourself with your last name and entity you represent. You can do it if you look into the image, the first image on the right side of the presentation. You can go to participants and then select the option rename, and you can change it. And this is for us to identify you more easily during the Q&A slot. Also, there will be a specific slot dedicated to the Q&A. And if you wish to ask a question, we kindly ask you to raise your hand. If this feature doesn't appear in your screen, or if you can't find it, then leave your question on the chat. And do not worry, because we will be really thoroughly, and we will see question by question, so we will answer everything. And finally, yes, just like I was saying, so the moderator, me, I will go through all the raised hands and ask the participants to turn on their microphones and video if they feel like it, and ask their questions. So kindly ask you to please wait your turn, and in the image, the second image on your right side, you can find the icon raised hand if you don't know already what it is. So now, just presenting the agenda. First, we will start by presenting the HUBCAP project, and I will give the word to my colleague Hugo from Aarhus University. Then we will present the Open Call 2.1 experiment that is currently ongoing, and it will be presented by me, Catarina, from HUBCAP. And then we will have a third presentation where we will show you some tips and lessons for a successful application. And then I will give the word to my colleague Ken from Newcastle University. And finally, we will have our Q&A section where we will answer all your questions. So now I will give the word to my colleague, Hugo.
So welcome everybody. Thank you, Katerina, for the introduction. I'm here to set the scene about the concepts about HUBCAP, and if you're applying to our call 2.1, one of the experiment calls, you may want to get a better understanding of what do we mean or what will be asked to you. At the same time, I'll also we still have calls of type 1 open, so I will also provide a bit of more details about what kind of assets we want to populate the platform, the HUBCAP platform with. So without further ado, let's see if I can change a slide by myself. It doesn't look like, so yeah, indeed. So
it has to be me, Hugo, so whenever you
that's
need,
all right.
Yeah.
I'll ask you then to switch slides. So yeah, indeed, HUBCAP is a EU project. We have a huge consortium, or a big consortium of 17 partners. We come from 10 countries. So me, myself, I'm based at Aarhus University. We are also the project coordinator. And if you transition, we will see the partners in this consortium that establish a network of digital innovation hubs. So KTH in Sweden, Newcastle University in the UK, Fortis in Germany, Politecnico Milano and Fondazione Bruno Kessler in Italy, Virtual Vehicle in Austria, and ULBS at Romania. And yeah, these locations are important because the digital innovation hubs have a role that you of local proximity. So if there's any in your country, you can contact them. HUBCAP, where Catherine comes from, it's a partner that has a long experience in organizing open calls, and they play that role in this project. So you will interact with them via the platform that they deploy. Then we have seed SMEs. So basically, these are SMEs that have experience in model-based design of cyber-physical systems, and they served as the initial population of our platform. And I think there's the last player that is a company in Italy that it's developing the platform itself as a software development company. So this is our consortium. Well, the next slide, please, Katarina. Yes. So in the map, you can see the different innovation hubs that are the initial hubs in the project, the locations of the SMEs. But basically, like kind of the main point is to say that we are innovation action. So we are co-financed by the European Union or European Commission, in fact. So we are in the scope of the Smart Anything Anywhere initiative. The project started last year in January, and it's expected to finish by December 2022. And we have a 8 million euro contribution from the EC part. But the goal is to provide this one-stop shop for European SMEs that want to join these cyber-physical systems revolution using model-based design techniques, concepts that well, if you're applying to an experiment call, eventually you may know what it is, but I'll set the scene in the next slides to make this more clear. But our vision indeed is that we want to lower the barrier for these partners, for these SMEs, to adopt this kind of model-based design. So in the next slide, I try to make more precise what we mean by a cyber-physical system. And let me just pause a bit. So, well, at least our ground understanding of what a cyber-physical system is depicted in the two figures on the left-hand side, or well, all of the figures have something to do with cyber-physical systems, but some are more on the model world. So basically, whenever you have computation affecting a physical process, so the control surfaces of an airplane, or the rotation of some kind of electrical scooter device, this is considered a cyber-physical system. And basically, like kind of there's several scenarios where like kind of computation is affecting physical processes, and there's people identified like kind of both a need to develop safe, secure, and autonomous cyber-physical systems that interact with humans in a respectful and keeping the data from these humans private. But at the same time, what causes barriers beyond this like kind of need, the general need, is that it is easy to, given a physical asset that a company owns or deploys or has a long-standing tradition of selling these kind of assets, it's rather easy to deploy some like kind of sensors and connect it to the web and start to extract some data out of it. But it's more difficult to use this data to make the product more adapt to situations, or even design better products. So these are the 5 Cs, or this is well described in a paper by Lee in 2015, where he proposes this 5 Cs architecture for the design of cyber-physical systems. So basically, the higher the smartness level that you want to develop in a product, the more you start to need a model of how this product, the physical asset that you are trying to make more smarter, the more the more you need models about it or how it behaves, and compare, like, for instance, the extracted behavior from the data that you pump from the real operation of the project compared to your model of your understanding, like, your virtual model about, or digital model about your product. So how would you expect it to behave? So, well, there's the need for model-based design, and that's one of the points of HUBCAP. So in the next slide, let's try to make precise what is model-based design. So basically, in this slide, beyond this, if you're applying to a call of type 1, where we try to attract assets that exist already. So if you're an SME and you have a model or a tool, we welcome you to apply to open calls of type 1, where you can just apply your asset or an asset that you own in our platform, being it either a model or a tool. But if you're applying to an experiment, it's also expected that there's a provider in your consortium, and this provider will provide either a tool, a model, or expertise about developing models and tools to the consortium, where another SME will adopt, right? So, and so to make the example tuned to the experiment call, let's say that you would develop valves, right? So nothing to do with the current case, but in the left-hand side here, we have this system worldwide exists. And the example here is a wastewater treatment plant. So you probably saw some of these, but basically, like, you can, let's describe it as like big tanks where wastewater, sewage out of homes and businesses gets piped into. And then there's a physical process, physical, chemical, etc. But there's a process to remove pollutants from this water, and then at the end you release the water into nature again without all these pollutants. So it's a process where the water should go from tanks to tanks, and you would imagine that there's valves that in the past would probably require somebody to manually open and close according to the treatment plan. But if it is smart, and nowadays you would expect that these valves open and close given some computational algorithm, or the process is computational now. So thus, eventually, if you develop this kind of valves, or if you have such kind of system, a real system, you probably have models about different components of the system, or a whole model of the whole system. So to exemplify here, right? So the models could be 3D animations, so 3D models like visualizations, any a CAD model, so where the water flow is somehow described, or you can animate the process in real time, for instance. It could be block diagrams, mathematical descriptions of some kind of continuous model of your real system. It could be just synthetical descriptions. It could be software, but eventually some specification of how, when the valve opens and closes, or what is the algorithm controlling the system. So basically, if you're playing the role as a provider in this experiment call, we would expect to see something similar to a model of a process and a tool. If you are deploying to a pull call an asset, so if you have some software that is related to cyber physical systems, if you have some CAD model, some visualization, we would be something that can be shared in a platform. So something that other users, this platform intends to be a marketplace. So some other users may just see your model and feel and want to adopt it in their processes, or they might find an interest in applying to an experiment kind of call to to develop further on top of your asset or your tool. Yeah, so I think I made it clear, but basically we don't want models that are not executable. So the typical counterexample would be, well, if you have the blueprints in paper for a building, that's not executable. That's not something that we can host in a platform online and people can download or interact with. But if you have some kind of BIM model of this building or CAD model, that is something that you can animate in a tool and you can interact with, well, this is the kind of asset that we accept. So if we move to the next slide. So given that we have that scope, we want to be a one-stop shop. We're working in this domain. Indeed, there's the HUBCAP call program where we have different kinds of calls. So the one that you are probably interested in by attending today is the calls of type 2, where I think that Katarina will explain this better, but basically at least 2 SMEs should define a consortium, and they will one of them will act as provider of model-based design for cyber-physical systems, and the other is more on the adopter side. So you probably have some product or some idea of product, and you need, or either you have identified a need for model-based design, or you think that model-based design will kind of improve your product. So calls of kind 1 are the ones that I just mentioned before, that they are open in concurrency with experiment. So if you have an asset, just submit it, and we will list it in this platform, in this marketplace, so users can kind of then download or interact with in this calls of type 2 experiments and innovate, or our users. But the difference then, like kind of today we will focus about experiment, but you can keep in mind this idea that a call of type 3 is just like kind of an advanced experiment where there's more requirements on how to how the process will go. There's a bit of co-creation, like kind of the ideas will be more refined, and there will be like kind of more interaction in the planning of something that makes impact in this area, where experiment is more like kind of trying to or foster that if the interaction between providers and adopters. So in the next slide, in this whole process, something that I want to evidence is that there's a network of digital innovation hubs, and this doesn't mean that we only affect our region. Definitely, if you are in the region of the UK Innovation Hub, in the region of Newcastle, you can contact them if you want to have a better understanding, or if you want to refine your project, right? Because in experiment projects, it's and innovate, eventually, like kind of things, you need to be more precise, or you probably want to refine well, like kind of what you want to do. And that's why this network exists already. So we will, during your experiment project, there will be elements of the digital innovation hubs, being it your local one or not, that will go along with you in the project, and they will serve as like kind of monitoring and like kind of counseling element to the project between the adopting SME and the provider SME. But basically, this network intends to foster this idea where you test before you invest in big changes or in big projects. We provide training, and indeed, like kind of we can help like kind of companies that want to join our program to refine their ideas. And for instance, well, is my asset, or I'm providing this software tool, I apply it to the domain of cyber-physical systems already, but I don't really fit the traditional model-based design approach, but I think I have some kind of model, underlying model on this tool, and so maybe contacting the network of DIHs will allow you to better understanding if you're investing your time in this grant or in this call in a reasonable way, or if you're like kind of your concept does not fit, for instance. So indeed, HUBCAP has a collaboration platform. So basically, you will interact with our platform via a website. So this is just a landing page. You will be given users, and you can browse models and tools there. So next slide. And indeed, there's this idea of testing before investing, right? So you can select models from the catalog, you can select tools from the catalog, and then the idea is to run them in this sandbox. So basically, I'll explain better what is the sandbox is, but mainly like kind of the experiments and the innovates and even the assets there are attracted using the pull call should be listed in our platform, and people can interact with it in the platform itself. So in the next slide, we will, yeah. Here I make more precise what is this interaction about, or like kind of what's the main focus. So this sandbox and this platform, the idea is that you access it through a web browser. And so, for instance, if you're a provider, you deploy your tool in this in our platform, right? And eventually, you can use it to provide access to your tool to your adopter SME. And for instance, there's features in the platform that allows you to, for instance, share a sandbox for an environment for your tool with some other partners, and interact. Both of you can interact with the model at the same time. There's a video online where we do a bit of advertisement of the features of it that you can check afterwards. But next slide. So if you were a provider in an experiment, your tool or your asset should be in our platform. So you can ask us questions today or whenever if you have any doubts about what does it mean to deploy your tool or asset or your model in our platform. But you can in this diagram, I just give the idea of what is our architecture for sandboxes, right? So basically, like for each sandbox, we launch virtual OSs where you can install your tool. So if your tool runs in Windows, you can just have a copy of Windows run virtually somewhere and a remote desktop access to it that you can then you and your users or the adopter SME can use to log in and access this remote desktop and interact with you at the same time with this tool. Yeah, so basically that's mainly it. I'll share later some videos that we have about the initial SMEs experiments and demos, so you can get an idea of what this means. So what does it mean to run it in your in the sandbox? But you can just imagine it as I use my browser to access a remote desktop somewhere that is hosted at engineering. Well, if eventually your concept or your asset does not fit here, on a case by case, we can study how to adapt it. But eventually, like kind of any model and tool that we can imagine would run in such scenario. So next slide. Oh, I have the demo. Sorry. So if we play here, yeah, here we have one of the tools. This is already the HUBCAP platform. It's in the sandbox. Basically, the sandbox provides you a checkout cart. You select items that you want to run your sandbox with. Eventually, you get in your portal the connection to the remote desktop. You can make it full screen. And as you see, typical tool that if you provide a tool that runs in Windows, you just have a Windows copy and you can interact with your tool in this environment. So here in 20sim, we have a continuous time model, one graph that establishes the behavior of some mechanical device. And yeah, and basically like kind of, if you're a tool provider and you're thinking, okay, shall I just submit to a type 1 call and deploy my asset? Well, if you're thinking about that, just think, well, if it is something like this, right? The tool, a piece of software that you can run somewhere, and access it via remote desktop, well, definitely. So it's then just a question of checking if it's interesting for our community or not. Yeah, but then if you access these slides later, you can have more videos well, and if you have any other questions, please just drop us some, well, either in the Q&A or later, just interact with us. So next slide, yeah, so I'm getting to the end of my part, but basically, as a provider in an experiment, if you have provided the consortium a model or a tool, eventually you need to first interact with the platform, or you have to deploy your assets in the platform. So if we go to the next slide, so basically this is what you would, this is the process that you will follow. So basically, like kind of NIT will ask you for your company details. It will set up a user for you, and then you get access to the platform, and eventually you can install your tool in one of these remote desktops in one of our sandboxes. And then obviously, like kind of, there will be like kind of a whole, if you define an experiment, you will probably have define some milestones with us about, for instance, providing a final demo about what was achieved, or like kind of about this interaction between you and the company, and we will provide you like kind of any help that you would need in terms of how to collaborate with the platform, or how to like kind of animate or like kind of how to use certain features of the platform. So getting to my last slide, in short, indeed, we offer indeed this network of digital innovation hubs. So don't forget about this. So the idea of this network is to foster or provide this one-stop shop as local contact of technical expertise, providing training, providing feedback about ideas that you may have that will become success cases in HUBCAP. So we have the open call program, which we are advertising, call of type 2, that Katerina will now talk to you. And yeah, at least from my side, I hope that I clarified what is model-based design and what's our interest and what's our collaboration platform. But definitely, if you have any question, just use the Q&A today to satisfy all your doubts. And yeah, thank you, Katerina.
Thank you, Hugo. Thank you so much for your presentation. We will now move forward to my presentation, and basically here now I will present the open call that it's ongoing, so call 2.1 experiment. We will see the timeline. I will present you I will show you how to participate, some aspects about the application form, and how the evaluation process be like, and which will be the evaluation criteria of your, well, that we will implement when evaluating your project proposals. So let's start by the timeline. So the first, call experiments or experiment calls, they are divided in 2 open calls. The first one started in the beginning of December, mid-December actually, and it will be running until the 4th March. So 3 months of open call. And then once the open call is closed, we will have 2 months of process for evaluation and selection. And then we will move forward to the implementation periods with the selected consortium. So basically, the call experiment will have between 4 to 6 months so that you can implement your projects. And it's divided in 2 sprints, so in 2 main phases. The first sprint will have the duration of 2 to 3 months, and then followed by the second sprint, also with the duration of 2 or 3 months, depending on the experiment you are proposing. As my colleague Hugo already told you, your work will be followed by a team of 2 members from our digital innovation hubs. And here the purpose is for them to follow up your project work progress, and of course provide you support if needed. So by the end of each sprint, you will have to deliver a report based on your KPIs and milestones presented in your project proposal, and this will be evaluated by the members that are accompanying or they are following your work. And only after your report is evaluated, you will receive the first payment and move on to the second phase. And the same process will be implemented during the second phase. Of course, you can access with more detailed information in the guidelines for applicants that is already available in our project website, specifically for the page of experiment calls. So the funding scheme, as experiment calls are different from pool calls because now we will fund a consortium of 2 SMEs. So we are looking at a user and adopter of model-based design tools for cyber-physical systems, and 1 SME provider of model-based design or cyber-physical systems. And the idea is that you experiment with model-based design either by integrating the HUBCAP ecosystem offers, and here we are referring to the pool calls beneficiaries, or implementing new model-based design solutions. So to be clear, you have 2 options when forming your consortium. You can look for partners or suitable partners in our HUBCAP ecosystem through the HUBCAP platform. And here we are talking about the SME providers that have already been selected from our pool calls. But of course, you can always form a consortium with an external provider. And here, and it's eligible at the same time. So you have 2 options to forming a consortium. But please remember that 1 SME that will be the user and the adopter, and 1 SME that will be a provider. So experiments should support the user or adopter SMEs who are less familiar with the model-based design tools for CPS, for cyber-physical systems, and to learn and experiment with these techniques supported by the provider SMEs. So experiments should address a clear business need for the user and the adopter in terms of improving the life cycle process, or even designing or even the design of the cyber-physical systems, for example, through a physical, through a visual prototyping or simulation of models. The consortium of 2 SMEs will receive a funding between 30K and up to 70K, divided into interactive sprints, as I showed before. So sprint 1, where you receive half of the budget, and in sprint 2, where you receive the remaining house. So the first phase, the first sprint is referring to the interactive development, and the sprint 2 is for the integration of the proposed project. So you finalize your experiment, and then you will have the integration of your experiments again in the HUBCAP platform. So how to participate? So first, you need to register yourself at App Success platform and register your SME if not already. And only then you can have access to the application form that is available through our App Success platform in the specific page for the HUBCAP call 2.1. So basically, we strongly recommend you not to wait until the last minute to submit your proposal. You have plenty of time. But it is strongly recommended that you do not leave it to the last minute. So the time to receive our applications, the time of receive the application as recorded by the submission system will be definite, and no system network failures will be accepted as excuse. English, of course, is the official language, and submissions done in other languages will not be evaluated. And as I said before, all applications must be submitted via App Success platform, where candidates must fill in an online application form, and the submissions received by any other channel will be discarded, meaning they will not be considered eligible for evaluation. Each consortium can only submit one proposal per open call. In case several proposals are submitted, we only consider the last one received, and we will discard automatically the other ones. Applicants may resubmit a proposal, so you will have a second opportunity for call 2.2, and here if you consider to resubmit, it is recommended that the resubmission clearly explain the improvements that have been made based on the comments provided by the evaluators. Please always be concrete and concise. Read carefully all the questions because they have character limitations, and also examine all the open call documents that we are providing you. And here we are referring to the guidelines of applicants. And in this particular document, you will have access to all the annexes that you need to fill in and upload along with your application form. This is really important because in case you are missing one of the annexes, you will not be considered eligible for evaluation. And if we are talking, we often receive a lot of questions regarding the UK companies based on the Brexit situation nowadays. But in our case, UK is considered eligible because the project started in 2020 and UK was still a European associated country. So yes, if you are a UK company, you can apply. So as for the application form, some remarks we would like to present you as well. So all the process and evaluation of application forms, HUBCAP is GDPR compliant, and we will request a minimum information needed to deliver the evaluation procedure. So a summary of the proposals and the participants' information will be shared with the European Commission and also shared with the partners within the HUBCAP Consortium. It is mandatory to upload Annex 4, Declaration of Honor, Annex 5, SME Declaration, Annex 6, Consortium Declaration, and Annex 10, Ethics Self-Assessment in PDF format or Word format, it's up to you, as part of the application process. So please go through all the questions on both annexes and make sure you have filled in all the required information, such as signatures, checking boxes, tables, etc. Other means of documentation, other means of communication, email, for example, are not accepted. What else? So here, I will also like to say that if you are a user or an adopter SME participating with a new SME provider, as I explained before, there are two ways to form a consortium with the provider SME. So through the HUBCAP platform or through an outsider of the HUBCAP ecosystem, so an external provider SME. And in this case, we are talking about a new asset that will need to be added to the platform as part of the experiment. If this is the case, so you have an extra annex that you need to fill in. And this is the Annex 3.1, so new asset, the description, which will be subject to an additional suitability check. And basically, the information you need to provide here is similar information that that we are asking for pool call beneficiaries. So it's really simple. It's nothing that complex, but there's basic information that we need together to see if together for the integration of the later, if selected for the asset integration in the HUBCAP platform. And finally, three main important points, because we often received questions about this as well. So please bear in mind that both SMEs from the consortium need to provide their respective Annex 4, so Declaration of Honor. And here, so basically each SME needs to fill in and sign their respective Annex 4. And here you can combine both SME declarations in one PDF format document or Word document and upload it together. The same goes for the Annex 5. So each SME from the consortium needs to fill in and sign their respective SME declarations, and then you will combine both SME declarations in one document and upload it. As per the Annex 6, the Consortium Declaration of Honor needs to be filled in and signed by both parties. And here in the Annex 6, so your consortium declaration, you will also describe your budget allocation per member or per partner of the consortium. So how is the evaluation process? You will register in the F6S platform, and then of course you will submit your application, your project or proposal application. You will be there will be an eligibility check, and you can have access to the eligibility check criteria within the guidelines of applicants. And if you are not considered eligible, you will receive a rejection letter with the points that made you not eligible for the evaluation. If you are eligible, then you will be considered for evaluation. And in the case of Call 2.1 experiment, the evaluation will be held by a pool of external evaluators with both technical and business expertise in model-based design for cyber-physical systems in the several domains that are in the scope of the HUBCAP project. So after the evaluation, you will also have access to this whole procedure in the guidelines for applicants. So please read carefully the guidelines for applicants because you have all the information there. So if you are selected, you will continue, you will move forward. But if you are not selected, then of course you will also receive a rejection letter with the summary of your evaluation summary report or consensus report with your scoring and some comments provided by the external evaluators. So we will have at least 2 external evaluators assessing each application, and we will select up to 15 consortium. All the consortium that I've selected will receive an acceptance letter, will also receive a summary of their evaluation, we'll also receive a report with their evaluation, and also the guidelines for the next steps to start experiments with, to start their experiment. So here I will present you really briefly the evaluation criteria. So it will be an external evaluation. As I said before, it will be done remotely and within the X6S platform. The evaluation will be conducted by an external evaluation board with expertise in model-based design and cyber-physical systems technologies, and of course, business development as well. And two external evaluators will score and comment each proposal based on the following assessments. So from 1 to 2, it will be poor, 3, 4 fair, 5, 6 good, 7, 8 very good, and of course 9 to 10 excellent. And any score from 1 to 2 on any of the criteria disqualifies the overall proposal. Please you need to pay attention here. So read this carefully and try to explain in the best way possible, and try to answer and explain clearly in the best way possible your idea, your project proposal, and what you really want to do as an experiment. And finally, here are the criteria and the definition. I will not read the definition because you have this on the guidelines for applicants. And of course, you can always contact us if you have any questions or doubts. But basically, your project proposals will be evaluated taking into consideration these 5 criteria. So the alignment of your project proposal, the excellence of your project proposal, the impact, of course, of your project proposal, the value, and finally the implementation and the team capacity. And this is it. I finished my presentation here. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the Q&A chat, and I will answer them later. And now I will give the floor to my colleague, Ken. So Ken, the word is yours.
Great, thanks very much. It took me a while to find my unmute button.
Can you just talk a little bit louder or increase your microphone?
I moved closer, is that good?
Yeah, okay, it's better. Thank you, Ken.
Okay,
go ahead.
Great. Cool, so thanks very much to Katharina and Hugo for doing a lot of the heavy lifting and going through all those details. I'm pleased to note that the UK is kind of mentioned in the Brexit agreement. The continuing participation of the UK in Horizon Europe seems probable, although we haven't got the details yet. So we're hopeful for continuing after, obviously HUBCAP is fine, but we're hopeful that we can continue the process as well. So definitely UK members should get involved with HUBCAP. So in my section, I just have a few slides here with tips and lessons for a successful application. So this is actually the first one of these the larger experiment calls. So some of these tips are around what we're looking for. There's a few lessons learned from our previous calls, which were obviously a bit smaller, but I think there's some useful things there. And then we have a final slide with links. You don't have to write them down, things will be available afterwards as well, but I'll just go through them. So if you could go for the next slide, please. Okay, so this is really the key one I wanted to get across about this experiment call, because we ask for consortia, or so a consortium of 2 SMEs applying for one experiment. That adds a little bit of complexity and might make SMEs think, well, how do I find a partner, or what should my partner do? The experiment, as we heard before, is about helping you as an SME working with another SME with a specific goal of experimenting with model-based design techniques for designing cyber-physical systems. So as we heard from the beginning with Hugo, we have this HUBCAP platform, which is housing a growing range of what we call assets. I've got a definition coming up, but so there are things on there that can help you as an SME work with model-based design, or they might be tools that you make as model-based design kind of advocates, tool providers, and you've already got them on the platform. Or it might be that you have something you'd like to put on the platform, but you haven't participated in the first call. And this leads to essentially where there's two sort of types of experiment where we're looking at building a consortia. The first one is where a new SME who is new to HUBCAP joins an SME that was successful in one of the pull calls, call 1.1 or 1.2 so far. And that means that they've already put something on the platform that can help someone else. In which case, the asset that they put on will be used as the basis for the experimentation. The new user will form a consortium with the existing asset provider from a previous call. And the platform is already hosting that tool. So the platform will act as a kind of way for that tool to be used. And then the experiment, what actually happens in the experiment, we're sort of less specific on, because that should really be driven by the business need or the potential business need for the new asset user. So it's this notion of try before you buy, test before you invest. We're supporting you to try out this asset and see, maybe I can use this in something we do already or something we'd like to get into, maybe a new domain or a kind of new market. Now, we're aware that requiring consortia to include an SME who was successful in call 1 is fairly restrictive. So we do also support consortia of 2 new SMEs who haven't previously applied to HUBCAP, but the roles are still the same. So there should be one asset provider who has something already, some model of something that they build, or some tool that lets people do modeling. And they should work with a user, like a prospective user who wants to use that asset to explore an experiment with model-based design. And again, the platform hosts this. So in this case, there's just that extra little step where the user uploads their tool or integrates their tool onto the platform. The only real difference here is that there's an extra annex which you have to complete just to make sure that the asset that you're suggesting is appropriate. And essentially it's the same kind of checks that we run for the pull calls, just to make sure it is something related to model-based design, or it's a model or a tool that can be used. So one thing we found in previous the call 1.x calls was there are many really excellent SMEs producing really cool stuff, but they were out of scope. So I think that covers this slide. Maybe we can go to the next one, and I'll go into more detail about what are assets. So I said asset about 10 times now. I'm aware that sometimes we have quite specific language that we use. I'm hoping that's not putting people off. My main suggestion would be to talk to us, and we can help explain these things and check with you, and do that as early as possible, because you're really going to increase your chances. So what is an asset? So we've mentioned model-based design a lot, and it's some element of model-based design that can help design cyber-physical systems. And we can think about these as there's 2 main ways that we can represent model-based design as an asset. One would be a tool, and another one would be a model. Because it's model-based design, model is involved in both. So tool assets are essentially pieces of software that allow creation or analysis of some kind of computer model. I picked a few here that might be familiar to kind of people. MATLAB from MathWorks is a very big tool that has a lot of modeling aspects, especially when used with, for example, Simulink. Others might be familiar with Modelica, which is primarily a language that's realized in various tools, including Open Modelica, who are part of the consortium via Research Institutes of Sweden. And there's others from things like Enterprise Architect. I should say Modelica also, there are also things like Daimler, which is the one of the commercial implementations of the 𝗛𝗪𝗕 language. Then there are things like Enterprise Architect, which essentially allows you to do things like UML, SysML, these more visual languages that are used for systems modeling, for example. And there's a whole range of other things. There might be quite general modeling tools. There might be quite specific modeling tools. If they're specific to, let's say, analyzing manufacturing or analyzing pressure in water flow, loads of things that we can imagine would be cyber-physical. So don't worry about the examples I've put here, because there's a huge list that's possible. And we're really interested in, through HUBCAP, finding those SMEs that are building these and getting them into our community, so that the community overall will be benefited, and Europe can do better overall in kind of upskilling everyone and competing around the world. So that's the kind of tool level. So that's really providers who already build some software that other people can use around model-based design. The other asset we consider is a model asset. So instead of software that builds a model, then we have an actual model that's built in one or more modeling tools already. And this can be a model of a system or component. So let's say you're a manufacturer of components in manufacturing. You may already use modeling tools to analyze, design your components. So then if you want to work with another company who might be looking for what you produce, let's say you produce electric motors, another company wants to work on electric, and they need a new electric motor, the model can then be a way to check that that's going to be a sensible thing to work with. And a model is something we generally expect might need to be run inside a tool, although through things like co-simulation, through the functional mockup interface, there are obviously ways to generate executable things from models. So it doesn't have to specifically be something that runs in a tool, but has often been built through some kind of tool. Okay, thanks. That covers what we're looking for. Yes, I've gone through some examples. So what might that look like? So I came up with some examples here just that we thought of. As I mentioned before, each experiment should be driven by the business needs of the asset user. Obviously, hopefully that also meets the business need of the provider through getting a new customer, getting into new markets, for example. So a couple of examples I thought of, one for each of the types I mentioned a few slides ago. So the first one is a winner from, let's say, Core 1.2, who makes a tool for modeling manufacturing parts, so plants. So they already have a software offer that allows them to help people model things for manufacturing. And maybe there's another SME who doesn't do many modeling already, but is interested in getting into modeling and thinks that their manufacturing could be improved by doing some modeling, model-based analysis, model-based design. And then the experiment would fund those two SMEs as a consortium to let the new user try out this modeling software in a kind of lower risk, lower cost way. And hopefully that makes a new connection. Maybe that goes great and they can apply to the Innovate call and come up with something brand new. That would be really nice. The second one is one where we have two things that are new. So let's say there's an SME providing wind turbines, wants to work with an SME supplying, let's say, oil filters. This is actually an example that someone spoke to me about as a potential when we were discussing the proposal. So let's say they're kind of both already using model-based design. The second one has a model of their filter, but it's not on the HUBCAP platform yet. So they can form a consortium that will first integrate the filter. They'll integrate this oil filter with the wind turbine model. So we're sort of assuming some modeling already exists here. There are various ways to facilitate this connection. And as a first step, the oil filter model will be integrated to the platform. So the annex will have been filled in saying, this is a model of an oil filter, and we will have checked that that makes sense to upload. Great, next slide, please. So here's just a couple of general tips that we've had. The first one will be to read the guidelines carefully. I appreciate there's quite a lot of text there, but all the relevant information about scope and objectives are all there, as well as guidelines for a successful application. I think one of the things we noticed in previous calls were quite a few cases where people were submitting applications that were rejected very quickly because they didn't meet one of the criteria that was quite explicitly mentioned. So, for example, TRL level, so technology readiness level, we had quite a few applications of brand new ideas that might be great in a couple of years' time, but that in the first call we had a certain level of TRL that we were looking for. So really thinking about those and checking the criteria. One thing to mention is that because we're funded by the European Commission, our consortium partners and then anyone who joins HUBCAP needs to comply with confidentiality and various no conflict of interest clauses. So be aware of that, and in both of these cases I would recommend strongly to engage with us and ask questions. So today is a great opportunity. We'll be moving on to that very shortly. We have, on the next slide I'll show in a second, we have, actually let's go to the next slide, then I can see it. So we have all these ways to learn about things. So applications are done through the F6S platform, and there's a forum there for Q&A to discuss. So Katerina and other colleagues will keep an eye out there and answer your questions. We also have a general email address, info@hubcap.eu. If you're really not sure where to ask or what, send us an email there and we'll put you in touch. Either we can answer immediately or we'll put you in touch with someone who can. The guideline for applicants and the application form are links there. We've been trying to maintain an FAQ, and obviously this gets stronger as we go along and we get more questions. So we'll try our best to make sure the FAQ answers a bunch of those questions. But again, if you're not sure, please do speak to us, and that's much more likely to find any problems early on that we can hopefully fix before you apply, by sort of helping you position things, etc. And you can also sign up for our newsletter. I just realized we have a new implementation here. So when you go first to hubcap.eu, there will be a small non-invasive pop-up where you can sign up. And we'll try and keep you updated with newsletters, things for calls coming up, etc., etc. Great, thank you. I think that might be my slide. Yes. Go ahead, Katerina, pass back to you.
Thank you so much, Ken. And yes, we can start our Q&A section. And this is just again a reminder that we have our Call 2.1 experiment going on, and the deadline is for March 2021. And you can follow us in our social media, Twitter and LinkedIn. We are constantly posting information about it. And of course, in case of any questions and doubts, feel free and don't hesitate to directly contact us. So Q&A. We have been receiving some questions here, so we will address them now. So, okay, so one of the first questions is UK partners impacted by Brexit. The answer is no. The project started in 2020, where UK was still considered European associated countries, so UK companies are eligible. So next one, how can a SaaS tool be deployed? And here I will give the floor to one of my colleagues, Ugo or Ken, so go ahead.
Sorry, Katerina, could you repeat the question?
Yes, so how can a software SSA, I don't know how to say that, SaaS tool?
Software as a service, yeah.
Thank you, software as a service tool be deployed?
Yeah, well, I can start on that, right, Ken? Or
yeah, definitely, please go ahead.
Yeah, so if it is a cyber physical systems tool that is already provided as a service, if it is ready to run in a cloud environment, it's easy, or I would say relatively easy, to deploy it in our platform currently. So shouldn't be the most problematic cases. So we expect problematic cases would be, well, I have a tool that only works on some kind of restricted version or ancient version of operating system X that nobody uses anymore. And our cloud platform, or even if it requires some special hardware, our platform would not cope with that. But if it is already software as a service, and if it runs in a cloud environment, I think that should be easy to integrate.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say, because as mentioned before, each sandbox version is essentially a full operating system with some caveats. So it can run a web browser. So if it has to be a web browser, we can go through there. There can be more sophisticated ways to do things, but as a basic thing, this can be definitely done.
Okay, so the next one is from Erhan Turan, and the question is, we were selected for pool 1 and added ourselves into the assets page. Still, I'm not sure whether we have been contacted by HUBCAP to deploy our software into the virtual platform Hugo is mentioning. What is the workflow we need to follow to upload our solution? Appreciate any feedbacks. Thank you.
So if I understand the question, this is about getting into the platform, right?
Yes, I think we
yes.
talked about this last week, right?
Yeah. So the platform went, well, the launch is soon, right? And Ken is ultimating the details.
February 3rd is our official launch day, but we'd like to get things involved before, obviously.
Yeah, and in fact, eventually, if you provided your details, the details that were requested, you provided an email. So wait for an email on that address from NIT, starting the process of providing credentials.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll be in touch shortly. Thank you, though.
Thank you. And the next question is from Bogdan. So can one company participate in multiple consortiums applications? The answer is no. So you need to, one SME can only participate in one consortium. And you should also be taking into consideration that you have a maximum amount of grant each SME can receive, taking into consideration the entire Smart Anything Everywhere program or initiative. So again, all this information is in the guidelines for applicants. So I will invite you to read really carefully, because all the information is there, but a straight answer to your question is no. The next one, it's from Shangli Yang. And for the option of introducing new provider, if success, would the new provider asset also become listed for other future users as a general asset?
Yes, I think so.
So the answer is yes.
Yes.
I'm a bit in the doubt. Is it about the F6S platform, like the grant system? Or
no,
the way I understood it, Hugo, was if you do the one where it's two new SMEs and one of them integrates step one of the experiment integrates their asset, then the asset becomes available for others as well. So in future.
Oh yeah. Great.
Yeah, that's my interpretation as well.
Yeah. Thanks.
So yeah, you might get invited in call experiment 2.2, for example.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so next one, again from Bogdan. And he's saying that they provide server cloud hosting for applications, considering that the setup and changes in service software configuration can lead to changes in usage of server hardware. For example, using different storage, allocate more processor or memory. Is this falling in cyber physical systems definition?
Well, that's a tough one, especially because it's so long, and somehow I'm not sure if it is the connection. I'm not completely hearing it, or maybe I confused it. Can you repeat the question again, Katerina? The part,
Yes, sure.
especially the part where it describes the.
So they are providing server cloud hosting for applications, considering,
Yes, cloud hosting.
yeah, so considering that the setup and changes in server software configuration can lead to changes in usage of server hardware.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, using different storage, allocate more processor or memory.
Oh, I see. Ken, do you want to have a go first, or because I can have my go now? And what I find difficult here is the physical part on the cyber physical systems definition. So clearly, there's physical elements in this description that is made. So like kind of hardware but normally when we think about cyber physical systems, so we think about indeed that those cloud elements, that hardware in terms of computation as one component, and then some physical component, some physical asset, something that has computation in like kind of working in symbiosis and controlling this device. And normally this would range, I don't know, from a door opener, right? So something that unlocks your door and opens it and closes it, to some kind of controller of an airplane, I don't know, actuator. The sentence that, as the sentence that you just read and the way I understand it, indeed, I miss to see the physical part, and we would have to twist a bit what is, well, what I understand as a cyber physical system definition, to consider the management of hardware related to cloud elements as something that is the physical part of the cyber physical systems approach. Do you agree with me, Ken?
Yeah, I had a similar reaction. So obviously, maybe that's something we could have a conversation about offline to get more details, and we can maybe help scope the problem. I guess my initial reaction was, where's the model-based element? So if you're going in as an asset provider, obviously servers and things like this are assets, but it's not a model-based design asset. It's a much more general thing. I think that might be out of scope. If you are a potential user, then yeah, I think it comes down to how cyber physical is it. I suppose, yeah, if the, exactly as Hugo said, if there was server hardware and software, and you were working with another SME who could help you do that better by modeling those processes, including both sides, then there might be an experiment there. But I think it would depend on what modeling was being done. I think that would be my view.
Okay, so the best option is Bogdan. Please, if you would like to send the same question and have a discussion after or outside the webinar, feel free to do it. And maybe it will be easier to clearly understand exactly what you are proposing and see if there's fallings or not in the cyber physical system. So the next one is from Erhan Turan again. So and the question is, should the solution run only on HUBCAP platform? Would it be okay if it runs on the solution provider's own system?
Ken, do you want to give it a first go, or I can go on? So
yeah, go ahead.
I would say this question is a tough one because it's a case-by-case analysis. I would say when the project was devised and the whole sandbox concept and like kind of the intention is to have be some kind of mediator on the experiment between the provider and the adopter. If you have to have your own tool somewhere hosted locally, well, in some cases that may be like kind of part of it. So in some other cases, if it is just a question of you're trying to protect or you don't want to really exchange. So I'm just imagining, right? So if you're providing a tool, right? And if this tool is provided to a client, to the adopter, eventually you may just provide it in your local server and not through the platform. But if it is like this, it's a really tough decision to say that this goes according to our principles, right? So to the idea of the initial idea of the project. But if it is just a subcomponent, right, of this tool, well, then it makes more sense, right? So indeed, there's an asset in the platform, and this asset uses some other resources in the web. But definitely we are in a gray area here. It's not easy. If there's a clear asset, and if it is this idea of a software tool may be installed in the platform and indeed depend on some other components, right? That's not a problem. But if it is completely external, right? So, well, it will be a tough decision to make if we run an experiment that completely bypasses the platform.
Yes, I agree with you, Hugo. So I think the applicant should consider that the experiment should run in the HUBCAP platform, because in the end, that's the goal. That's our main objective of the project.
Yeah, I agree with you, Catherine. In terms of procedural, project like kind of management-wise, indeed. Technically, that's what I was just saying. Maybe Ken has something to add in terms of, I don't know, technicalities involved in deploying assets to the platform.
Yeah, case by case is definitely interesting. We've obviously mentioned software as a service, which if it's already running on a different server, is in a way not running on the platform, but it's accessible through the platform. So it's making that available through the platform in a way that sort of makes it possible for others to try out. That's the main goal we have underlying these things, I would say.
Okay, so it seems really good that the HUBCAP platform functions as a gateway to other, and now I'm missing the term here, software as a service, for example. Okay, thank you, Hugo and Ken. And so another question from Xiangli Yang is, how would the budgeting be characterized by the size/impact of the idea, such as smart factory versus a doorbell, or by effort of each SME or some other criteria? So Xiangli, here we will leave this to your consideration in terms of budgeting. That's why there is an annex for the Consortium Declaration of Honor. So the idea is you form a consortium, and along with your partner, you strategically define how you will characterize the budget, taking into consideration all the steps you need to implement and develop your experiment. So in the end, what we will evaluate is an overall budget, and evaluate, of course, how you will use it to implement what you are proposing in your project, or in your ideas. But this is something you need to define by yourselves in the consortium. So I hope this is perfect. Thank you. So let me check. So because I'm checking the Q&A chat, but I'm also receiving questions in the other chat. So let me check if we are answering everyone. Okay, so one question, I will start from the beginning because it will be easier. Okay. When will be the results for call 1? So Gabriel, we closed the evaluation. I think you are referring to the call 1.2. We closed the evaluation and the selection yesterday, and now we will proceed to to finalize all the templates, rejection and acceptance letters, as well as the consensus evaluation summary reports. And by the end of this week, we will present the results for call 1.2. I hope this answers your question. Another question, it's from Clemens Schigel. So is the platform accessible now? Ugo and Ken already replied to this one. It will be accessible this month, so really soon. And we will be sharing publicly this information. Another question is from Nick Tudor. So can SMEs be in more than one proposal in a different consortium? I already answered this as well. So the answer is no. For more clarification, please read the guidelines for applicants. Another question from Fernando de los Rios. Can we apply directly to call 2 or should we start with call 1? No, you can directly apply to call 2. So there is no, it's not mandatory for you to apply first to call 1 and then to call 2. So you can directly apply to call 2. And another question from Peter Solic, I think is how it's spelled the name. If not, I'm so sorry. I did not notice cross-border requirements. Is it needed to have 2 different countries involved in the experiment? Okay, so cross-border is not mandatory. So it can be a consortium from the same country. This is my understanding, but we encourage if you could partner up with the SME from different countries. But I'm also giving the word to my colleagues. So Ugo, would you like to say something here regarding the cross-border?
Yeah, I think that's what I've been hearing since the beginning. So whenever this issue is raised, we definitely think that at evaluation time, a lot of, if you have a one country application, well, it has to be really good to somehow like kind of step up among all the others that are like kind of multiple country. But definitely, if it has a strong value, this would be considered, and it's not a this how you call this, like kind of now the word is away from my head, like kind of exclusion criteria, right? So
yes, exactly.
You can do it.
But it's certainly encouraged, and as Hugo said, as part of probably what we call making sure we have a good portfolio of experiments. So I think cross-border would be something we would be overall looking for. But we wouldn't, as Hugo said, we wouldn't exclude a really strong proposal from same countries.
Yes, okay, so it's the same opinion from the three of us. Thank you, guys. And finally, as from Erhan, yes, please send us an email through info HUBCAP doc, and we continue to, well, we can continue discussing your question later. And I think this is it. Let me check if we have something here. And because we are also reaching our time, so is TRL level required in this phase, Bogdan? So if you are partnering up with a provider SME that it's new, you should consider that the provider SME, the technology needs to be a minimum TRL of 5, which is actually the same conditions as per pool calls, because it has to do with the asset integration in later on in the HUBCAP platform in case your consortium is selected. So yes, please consider a minimum TRL of 5. Another question, and then afterwards we close the webinar. So the coordinator role, what's the responsibility? How big would the effort be? Is project management experiment enough? Okay, so this is a tough one. Well, basically the coordinator role, he will be the main contact of the consortium, and he will be well responsible for answering, well, for attending everything. How big would the effort be? So again, this is up to members of the consortium. And it has to do with the experiment, the idea of the experiment itself. So it's up to you, members of the consortium, to define. Is project management experiment enough? I don't understand this question. So project management experiment, it's relevant, of course, but wow,
maybe
enough?
So is it project management experience?
Yes, enough.
So the way I took that was, if you haven't done a researchy kind of project before, is it much different, I guess, is the meaning, maybe?
Okay, yeah, it makes sense. Okay.
So I think you can imagine, in some sense, there'd be kind of a slight customer-client relationship between HUBCAP, so there's things we would expect. Probably meetings to kind of keep track of things.
Yes.
Some reporting, some short reports for getting deliverables ready, but obviously that can be delegated to people in your organization, so probably works in much the same way as an equivalent sized project, I think would be fine. So you don't have to have been a coordinator of EU.
Okay, yeah.
If I understood the question correctly.
Yes, so Shangli answered. Well, yeah, so he got it. Thank you, Shangli. And finally, last question from Leonid. How do I find a partner for the consortium? So you can look for a partner within the HUBCAP ecosystem through our project website and later on through the HUBCAP platform. This is the only way we can help you to find a suitable partner.
I think we might be planning a little matchmaking at the launch event, hopefully.
Okay, perfect. So we will also have a matchmaking. We will have an event, and we will do a matchmaking activities. But we will be sharing more information concerning this.
Yeah, so that's currently planned for morning of 3rd of February. They'll be similar to today, but with more details about the platform and a chance to get put in breakout rooms to chat to people with like-minded to help you find. But definitely until then, check the HUBCAP, the asset listing page on the HUBCAP platform to see who's already in one in call 1. And then there'll be more from call 1.2 there as well soon. So that would be potential SMEs that you can contact from there if you're interested in using their assets.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Ugo. And thank you, everyone. We will be, of course, sharing today's webinar presentation through email with you all. And feel free again to contact whenever you have questions and doubts. Follow us on Twitter and on LinkedIn. You have all the information here, as well as our email, and of course, check our website. And this is it from our side. I hope this was helpful, and we wish you a really, really good end of the week and weekend. So have a nice day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Likewise. See you.